You're a buyer in a nice dress, and that's all you'll ever be. The words weren't spoken. They were unleashed, a venomous crack that shattered the Phoenix Charity Gala. 100 diamond-draped heads snapped in unison, smiles freezing into masks of shock. The string quartet screeched into silence. Every eye in the Olympian Hotel's grand ballroom fixed on one tableau. At the epicenter stood Isabella Sterling, the night's hostess. The city's darling, a porcelain beauty whose lineage was etched into the marble of museums surrounding them. Her platinum hair cascaded over bare shoulders, her gown of liquid silver mocking the starlight. In her hand was a dessert plate bearing an 8-layer chocolate cake. With a flick of her wrist, casual as swatting a fly, she launched it. The impact was brutal. The cake exploded against Dr. Sophia Chen, thick chocolate smearing across her face, dripping onto her pristine emerald silk gown. The ballroom held its breath. Then came the laughter, nervous at first, then swelling into a cruel chorus. Phones rose like fireflies, lenses hungry. "It seems money still can't buy class, can it?" Isabella declared, her voice slicing through the chaos. Her friends shrieked with delight. But Sophia Chen did not break. She stood perfectly still, spine unbendable beneath the defiled silk. Her emerald gown hugged a form radiating dignity no amount of chocolate could erase. Her expression was terrifyingly calm. Slowly, she lifted her hand and scraped frosting from her cheek, letting it fall to the marble floor. Splat! The laughter faltered. In the back, a voice whispered, "Wait, do you know who she is?" Isabella leaned closer, her smile sharpening. "Some doors, darling, are meant to remain closed. Some people are meant to stay outside looking in." Before we witness the fallout, drop your city in the comments. If you believe dignity is the ultimate armor, hit that like button and subscribe. Sophia's silence wasn't weakness. It was weight, pressing down on the marble, sucking oxygen from the gilded air. This gala had been the philanthropic event of the decade. The Olympians' ballroom was a cathedral to money. Frescoes of Greek gods covered vaulted ceilings. 3 chandeliers dripped diamonds of light. This was a performance of power. Isabella had moved through the room like a silver phantom. Guests orbited her, drawn by her family's name, banking heirs, tech founders, daughters in jewels that could fund nations. To them, Isabella was a gatekeeper. Around Sophia, conversations stuttered back to life. No one moved to help her. Not a single napkin offered. To stand with the victim was to volunteer for exile. She provoked her. "She must have," said a woman in sapphires, as if the victim were to blame. Isabella laughed again, the sound echoing through the hall. The catering staff circulated as if nothing had happened. The quartet hesitantly resumed, but the music sounded thin. The atmosphere had irrevocably altered. Isabella raised her glass in a mocking toast. "To those of us who know our place." Guests lifted their glasses nervously, desperate to align with her power. What none of them saw was the stillness of the woman they mocked. In that stillness was gravity, heavier than chandeliers, denser than marble, a silence that pulled every eye back to her again and again. The tsunami was standing quietly in emerald, watching, waiting, calculating. The laughter mutated, feeding on its target's silence. The ballroom resembled a coliseum where social assassination was entertainment. Smartphone screens formed a constellation of voyeurism, red dots blinking like malevolent eyes. A venture capitalist zoomed in on the frosting dripping from Sophia's jaw. A young influencer whispered to her phone, "OMG, you guys, total meltdown at the Sterling. Nangala, epic fail." She giggled and raised her glass. Isabella strutted to the stage's edge. "Proof that money can get you a ticket to the party?" She paused. "But it can never buy you belonging." The crowd roared. Some clapped, others smirked. Not a single soul interfered. The first law of the elite: laugh with the predator, not with the prey. A waiter stumbled past. Isabella plucked a pastry and hurled it at Sophia's feet, where it exploded across the emerald silk. "Oopsie!" Isabella cooed as her friends howled. Sophia remained a statue, the chocolate like war paint, her dignity seemingly flayed bone by bone. Yet her posture was unbroken, chin lifted, shoulders squared, eyes unwavering. "Can you imagine thinking she could just waltz in here?" a man whispered loudly. Another guest muttered, "She ought to be grateful she was even invited." Isabella held her glass aloft. "Let this evening be a lesson. Lineage, heritage, true elegance. These cannot be bought. They are born." The cameras kept rolling. The humiliation was becoming viral history. And still, Sophia did not move. She took a slow breath, scanning the room with cold clarity, watching opponents move pieces into a perfectly designed trap. The ballroom believed it was witnessing spectacular failure. What they were actually watching was the terrifying silence before lightning strikes. The chocolate had dried on her cheek. Inside her mind, there was no chaos, only diamond-hard clarity. She heard her grandmother's voice from memory. "The world will test you with ice. They will shame you in their great halls. Remember, dignity is not a sound you make. It is the silence you command." Laughter rippled again. Isabella lifted her glass for another toast. But Sophia didn't truly hear it. She listened to her own heartbeat. She had survived rooms colder, crowds crueler, humiliations deeper than this. Her silence was calculation. Every smear of chocolate was a mark in a ledger, an invoice soon to be delivered. She felt the room trying to crush her, force her spine to bend, and yet she stood resolute. Her gaze drifted briefly toward Isabella. The hostess's laughter was wide, all teeth and gums. The power dynamic seemed absolute. But Sophia saw what no one else did: a flicker, a tremor in the flawless performance. Cruelty is the last refuge of the insecure. She catalogued faces with dispassionate precision. Then she drew a deep breath. Her silence deepened until it became physical. A hurricane doesn't shout its name. It gathers power in the quiet ocean until the pressure becomes too heavy to breathe. They thought they had broken her. They hadn't. They had given her a gift, a stage, an audience watching with rapt attention, believing they witnessed a downfall. They were catastrophically wrong. This humiliation wasn't her epilogue. It was her overture. Isabella stepped closer, heels clicking sharply. She plucked a pink macaron and flicked it into Sophia's lap. The crowd roared. Another followed, shattering into almond dust. "That emerald is such a delicate color. What a shame it stained so easily." Laughter came faster, more feral. A socialite whispered, "This is absolutely savage. I love it." Isabella began circling Sophia. "Our guest thought a fat bank account could buy her a crown, but crowns are not for sale." She leaned in. "Crowns are inherited. Crowns are born." The words struck like stones. The crowd fed on the spectacle like piranhas. Sophia remained utterly still, her refusal to collapse infuriating the room further. Isabella leaned close, whispering for nearby microphones. "You should be grateful. I've given you more attention than you'll ever deserve in your entire life." Applause erupted. Someone started slow, mocking claps. From the back, a man shouted, "Show her the door!" A chant began. "Out! Out! Out!" Isabella spread her arms wide, a malevolent conductor. The chant rose to a roar, phones filming with fervor. But Sophia's silence, it remained a fortress. She stood in the hurricane's eye, a column of stone absorbing every insult. And in her stillness, something powerful began to shift the room's foundations. The mob believed they were casting her out. They had no idea they were setting her stage. The chant was a physical force echoing off walls. Isabella raised her arms higher, spinning in triumph. This is what happens when pretenders try to wear crowns they haven't earned. Still she stood. The chant crashed against a granite cliff, utterly powerless to move her. Then it happened. Sophia raised her hand, not in desperation, but with the calm deliberation of a monarch calling for silence. A ripple of silence spread from her in concentric circles. Voices faltered. Phones zoomed closer. Isabella blinked, her grin twitching. Has the little mouse finally found her squeak? But Sophia didn't speak. She wiped another streak of frosting from her collarbone, held it up, and let it drop. The chocolate splattering on marble cracked through the room like a gunshot. The room froze. For the first time, it wasn't the hostess, but her target who commanded silence. Eyes shifted nervously. Finally, Sophia spoke. Her voice was calm, resonant, carrying without a microphone. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want to do? The question struck like lightning. It held no anger, no plea. It was a warning delivered with chilling finality. Isabella laughed nervously. Do what? Remind an imposter she doesn't belong? Sophia's gaze cut through her, steady and unblinking. Her silence stretched again, heavier this time, a palpable force that sucked sound from the air. The crowd stirred uncomfortably. A man lowered his phone. A woman's smirk suddenly looked foolish. Isabella forced another laugh, sharper, desperate. A high-pitched note of panic the entire room began to hear. For the first time all night, it became terrifyingly clear. Sophia Chen was not the victim they thought she was. She was the storm they had missed, taken for silence. The silence was thick, unbearable. Then whispers started. Who is she? A young man muttered. Wasn't she on the cover of Forbes? Another whispered, if she were that woman, she wouldn't just stand there taking this. But uncertainty spread like cracks across frozen ice. The chant had died. Confident laughter evaporated. In its place, nervous murmurs multiplied. Isabella tried to seize control. Don't be fooled by a power suit. A magazine cover doesn't make you royalty. This is my house, my city, my world. But her voice wavered, no longer holding authority. Guests were remembering. News articles, television interviews, photos from global forums. They had seen this woman's face before, framed by headlines about global logistics, technological innovation, and fortunes measured in billions. Sophia stood unmoving, letting silence speak more articulately than Isabella's frantic words. Then she spoke again, quiet but steady. You believe I am here tonight because I needed your invitation. Gasps rippled through the hall. The sheer audacity struck harder than any insult. A man whispered urgently, Wait, isn't she the one who bought out Consolidated Air Freight? Phones were no longer recording. They were weapons of research. Guests scrolled feverishly, screens glowing. And there it was, her face, her name. Sophia Chen, founder and CEO of a global tech empire. Next to her name were numbers that made the collected wealth of everyone in that room feel like pocket change. A woman gasped. Another whispered in horror, Oh my God! Isabella saw it. Panic flashed across her face before she smothered it with another paper-thin laugh. Don't let her fool you. She's a nobody. But even as the words left her mouth, her eyes darted desperately, reading horrified expressions, feeling the catastrophic fracture of her control. Sophia didn't need to shout. She let the devastating truth bloom like wildfire. She had always understood. Power doesn't come from raising your voice. It comes from making others lower theirs. The tide was no longer turning. It had become a tsunami. Isabella could feel the floor slipping from under her. The humiliation had been her weapon, but now the revelation was beyond her control. The ballroom buzzed, a frantic hive of nervous whispers. Smartphone screens glowed, faces growing paler as brutal truth cut through. They had expected cheap theater. Instead, they stared at a woman whose corporate empire was woven into the fabric of their lives, the industries they depended upon, the stocks padding their portfolios. Sophia let them whisper. When she spoke again, her voice was low but crystalline. Some of you signed contracts with my subsidiaries without reading the name on the letterhead. A sharp collective breath. Someone's phone shattered against marble. The venture capitalist went rigid, face draining. He recognized her name because it was the signature on his firm's quarterly 9-figure funding checks. Isabella's laugh was brittle. She's bluffing. This is just performance. Sophia slowly turned her gaze back, calm and unflinching. You call this your house, your city, your world? She paused. But please, Isabella, tell me. Tell us all. What happens when the lines of credit financing your father's galleries, your mother's boutiques, and your family's real estate holdings simply vanish by sunrise? The words fell like granite stones. The last laughter was swallowed by pure dread. Guests shifted, glancing at one another. Some already knew. Others were realizing their comfort, their wealth, their social positions were all threads that Sophia Chen held the power to unravel with a single command. Enough, Isabella snapped, voice cracking. You don't scare anyone here. But her friends looked profoundly uneasy. One man muttered, She controls the Meridian Tech Fund, doesn't she? Another whispered, My God, she's that woman. Sophia took another slow breath. She raised her hand again, palm outward, as if to steady the violently shifting room. Are you certain that this is the stage you want to stand on with me? The question didn't just fill the room, it remade it. Power itself tilted on its axis. Isabella tried to laugh again, hysterically, but it was hollow, the sound of utter desperation. Her silver dress still sparkled, but it no longer blazed with authority. It looked like tinsel. The crowd wasn't even looking at her anymore. Their gaze was fixed with terror and awe on the woman she had tried to destroy. Raw animal fear flickered, not in the victim's eyes, but in the hostess's. Isabella's smile had cracked beyond repair. Her crimson lips trembled. Sophia took another deliberate step forward. The chocolate had dried into scars across her emerald gown, but she seemed to stand taller, her presence filling the ballroom more completely than chandeliers or music ever could. Her voice was steady, each word a perfectly calibrated instrument of destruction. This foundation you celebrate tonight, this sterling legacy fund you are here to toast, runs almost exclusively on my capital. A gasp tore through the crowd like a shockwave. Heads turned as one toward Isabella, whose face had blanched to ash. I have personally invested $7.8 billion into the very structure you so proudly claim as your family's empire, Sophia continued. Her tone was factual, clinical, surgical. And tonight, in front of all your allies, your patrons, and your cameras, I am formally withdrawing it all. First silence, then absolute panic. Phones whipped out again. Conversations exploded in frantic whispers. A man clutched his chest. That's the entire lifeline, it's everything. Another hissed. Wit! Hout her, they're liquidated, they collapse. Isabella staggered back. The champagne flute slipped from her hand, shattering on marble. Champagne bled across the floor like liquid gold. You can't, she stammered, voice tiny. This is my family's. It was, Sophia cut in, voice calm, words final. But now it ends. The weight crushed the air from the ballroom. Guests who had howled with laughter now stood pale, their own futures unraveling in a single sentence. The glamour disintegrated, replaced by cold, metallic dread. Whispers were no longer gossip. They were about survival. She just pulled nearly $8 billion, the foundation. It's over. They'll lose everything. For the first time, every eye completely abandoned Isabella. They turned fully toward Sophia Chen. They were not looking at ridicule, nor a victim. They were looking at the sole absolute power in the room. Victoria tried to speak, but her voice broke into a pathetic sob. Her invisible crown, the authority she had wielded so brutally, had shattered. Everyone saw the glittering fragments at her feet. Sophia raised her chin, steady, unbroken, and let silence hang for 10 long seconds. The humiliation had not just flipped, it had become annihilation. The gala no longer belonged to its hostess. It belonged to the woman she had tried to destroy. The ballroom imploded into chaos. Phones buzzed with frantic calls. Diamond-studded patrons clutched devices as if billions had been vacuumed from their own accounts. "Get finance on the phone now," one man hissed. "They'll announce this to the markets by morning." Isabella stood frozen, a tragic figure in silver, champagne pooling around shattered life. Her so-called friends backed away one by one. No one reached for her hand. They turned their backs, desperate to disassociate. A socialite muttered, "She's finished, utterly finished." A woman leaned into her husband's ear. "We should leave before we're photographed," near her. Too late. Photographers had arrived, drawn like sharks to blood. Cameras flashed, capturing Isabella in utter ruin. And in every photograph, framed behind her, stood Sophia Chen, calm, composed, chocolate still clinging to her emerald dress like a testament to survival. News alerts pinged across the hall. Breaking: Dr. Sophia Chen withdraws 7.8B from Sterling Legacy Fund. Shock at Phoenix Gala. Hostess publicly humiliated as empire collapses. Isabella tried to speak. "This is my family's legacy," she cried desperately. No one listened. Her words dissolved into reporters' murmur, clicking heels of departing guests, hushed whispers of lawyers calculating hours. Sophia hadn't moved. Her silence spoke with more authority than rising panic. Her stillness was a center of gravity, drawing every eye, every headline, every allegiance toward her. Above the fireplace, a massive portrait of Isabella's great-grandfather loomed. Tonight, its gaze seemed to mock his descendant. Beneath it, his entire legacy crumbled, abandoned by the very people who had cheered her on an hour before. Her kingdom had fallen. At its center, calm as she'd been at the beginning, stood the woman she had tried and failed to humiliate. She was no longer the target. She was the architect. Sophia did not rush her exit. She adjusted the shoulder of her emerald dress. The chocolate had hardened like battle scars. Her hand brushed a final streak from her cheek, not to hide evidence of assault, but to reveal the unwavering steadiness beneath. Reporters surged forward. "Dr. Chen, is it true you've pulled the entire endowment? Will the Sterling Foundation collapse tonight?" She raised her hand. Instantly, the cacophony dropped to respectful hush. The power in the room was no longer in Isabella's silver dress or her family's centuries-old name. It resided here. Her voice, when she spoke, was measured, deliberate. "Dignity is not for sale." She paused. "And power is not a crown you inherit. It is the truth you are willing to stand on when the entire world tries to break you." The words rang across marble and glass, searing into the ruined party's silence. No one dared interrupt. Even flashing cameras seemed to pause. Isabella crumpled further into isolation. Once radiant, she now looked small beneath glittering chandeliers. Her beauty seemed hollow. Her allies had vanished. Every eye had turned from her. Even her great-grandfather's portrait seemed to glare in judgment. Finally, Sophia turned to leave. Her heels struck marble with steady cadence, and the crowd parted without hesitation, a sea of tuxedos and gowns cleaving down the middle. Men worth billions stepped back. Women in diamonds lowered their gazes. She did not look back as she walked through the gilded doors. Her voice carried one last time. Humiliation does not weaken a person. It only reveals who truly holds the power. Her words echoed long after she was gone. Outside, cameras flared like lightning. Journalists broadcast her walk into the cool night as though it were a coronation. The truth was larger than any ink or pixels. It was the indelible image of a woman who had walked through a hurricane of hatred and emerged not just unscathed, but untouchable. Inside, funereal silence lingered. Isabella collapsed into an empty chair, silver dress pooling like ruins of a fallen throne. No one came to comfort her. The ghost of the chant whispered through her memory, but this time it was hers alone to hear. This story serves as a powerful reminder that the world is changing. The old guards of inherited power are being challenged by a new authority, one earned through resilience, intelligence, and unbreakable spirit. If this story moved you, share this video. Subscribe for more stories that matter and hit that notification bell. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for watching.